All right, let's just jump right in. Take a good look at this handbag. At first glance, it kind of looks like a colorful souvenir, right? Something you'd pick up at a street market. But here's the crazy part. You gotta lean in closer. Look at what's actually woven from. That's not just paper. That's money. Real currency. The man making this, Wilmer Rojas, he uses 800 individual bills to make just one of these purses. A few years ago, the money in that bag could have maybe bought you a pound of rice. Today, the bag itself sells to tourists for about 10 bucks. The money inside it is literally worth more as a building material than as, well, money. And that right there, that's the central mystery we're unpacking today. This isn't just about a bad economy, it's a ghost story. Because 40 years ago, this very same country was the envy of the entire world. I mean, they called it Saudi Venezuela, a place so rich the Concorde supersonic jet was a regular thing, and people would fly to Miami for the weekend just to go shopping. This country is sitting on the largest proven oil reserves on planet Earth, more than Saudi Arabia. They basically won the geological lottery. So how on earth does a country win that lottery and end up completely bankrupt? So broke that its people have to flee through the jungle just to survive. So today, we are driving into the Venezuela paradox. We're going to unravel the mystery of how the world's potentially richest country drove itself right off a cliff. To really understand the nightmare of today, you have to start with the dream of yesterday. So let's hop in a time machine and go back to the 1970s, which was an absolute golden age for Venezuela. See, in 1974, an oil embargo hits the world, and the price of oil quadruples, like overnight. And for Venezuela, it was like gold just started raining from the sky. The government had so much cash, they literally did not know what to do with it all. This phrase you see here, dame dos, it means give me two. And it just perfectly captures the feeling of that whole era. It got famous because Venezuelan tourists shopping in Miami, they had so much money to burn, they just point at something they liked, like a new TV, and tell the clerk, dame dos, give me two. It was this incredible symbol of wealth and just absolute confidence. And this really puts it all into perspective. I mean, we're not just talking about being a regional powerhouse. This was a global player. They had the highest GDP per capita in all of Latin America. They were richer than countries in Europe, like Spain and Greece at the time. The Concorde jet, the absolute pinnacle of luxury travel, it was making regular stops in Caracas. Venezuela was, for all intents and purposes, on top of the world. But, and this is the first big twist in the story, all of that incredible wealth was kind of a hallucination. It was built on this thing economists call the Dutch disease. Here's how it works. Imagine you find a treasure chest full of gold in your backyard. So you quit your job, you stop fixing your leaky roof, you just spend the gold. That's exactly what Venezuela did. All that easy oil money meant they just stopped making anything else. Why bother growing your own food when you can just import it? Why build cars? The oil money was so easy, it just completely hollowed out all of their other industries. And that left the entire country dangerously, totally dependent on this one single thing. Okay, now let's fast forward to 1998. After that 70s oil boom, prices eventually went down, and all the poverty that was kind of swept under the rug during the golden age, well, it started to show, and the country was just desperate for a charismatic leader. And right into that void steps this incredible storyteller, Hugo Chavez. He didn't run as some radical. He ran as a savior. He went all over the country with a really simple, powerful message for the poor. You're poor because the rich stole your oil money, and I'm here to give it back. And here's the thing that's easy to miss from the outside. People adored him. He gave a voice to millions who felt completely left behind. And then, in the 2000s, oil prices shot way up again, and Chavez looked like an absolute genius. He poured billions into social programs, health clinics in the slums, cheap food, education. For a few years there, it really felt like this socialist paradise was right around the corner. But under the surface, as you can see here, he was setting the stage for the whole thing to blow up. Which brings us to the fatal moment, the real point of no return, December 2002. This is it. This is the moment the country's fate was sealed. The highly skilled workers at PDVSA, the state oil company, they went on strike. And these weren't just any workers. This was the brain trust of the whole operation, the geologists, the engineers, the people who actually knew how to get Venezuela's super thick, sludgy oil out of the ground. They were warning Chavez that he was turning the company into a political tool and that it would destroy it. And his response? He goes on live television, blows a whistle for dramatic effect, and just starts shouting "Fuera! Get out! firing them one by name for the whole country to see. I mean, just let the scale of this sink in. We're not talking about a few troublemakers here. Chavez fired over 18,000 of the country's best and brightest technical minds. To put that in perspective, it would be like NASA firing every single one of its engineers and astronauts, and then replacing them with political cronies who've never even seen a rocket. That is exactly what happened to Venezuela's oil industry. The collapse wasn't instant. It takes a while for things to fall apart, but the country's brain had been surgically removed. The whole machine just started to rust. So once you've gotten rid of all the experts and replaced them with loyalists, guess who shows up? The thieves. The next chapter in Venezuela's collapse wasn't just bad decisions. It was organized, industrial-scale theft. A massive corruption machine was built to basically suck the treasury dry from the inside. So how did they do it? Well, this slide shows the heart of the scam, and it was brilliantly simple. The government created this currency control system. Here's how it worked. If you were a friend of the regime, you could buy US dollars at this crazy low official rate, say 10 bolivars for $1. But out on the street, the real black market rate was more like 100 bolivars for $1. So you could take your government-approved dollars, walk outside, sell them, and instantly make 10 times your money without doing a single thing of value. It was basically a license to print money, handed out only to the well-connected. And this unleashed an absolute frenzy of corruption. People started creating fake briefcase companies just to ask for cheap dollars. They'd claim they were importing food or medicine, get the dollars, and then just flip them on the black market. It got so absurd, people were importing empty shipping containers just so they'd have the paperwork to prove a transaction happened. It all kind of boiled over with things like the briefcase scandal, where some government crony got caught in Argentina with a suitcase stuffed with $800,000 in cash. And that was just the tiny tip of a gigantic iceberg. Billions were siphoned off this way. And then the music stopped. In 2013, Hugo Chavez died. His hand-picked successor, Nicolas Maduro, took over. And just 1 year later, global oil prices crashed. And that fire hose of free money that was holding the whole rotten system up, it just turned off. And what was left? Well, the farms were gone. The factories were gone. The oil engineers were gone. The treasury was empty. There was nothing left but debt and pure desperation. And this is where the story gets really, really dark. We're talking about hunger, a real famine. As the economy completely imploded, food just vanished. The Maduro diet became this grim joke people told to describe starving, losing weight because there was nothing to eat. And the stats, they're just horrifying. In 2017 alone, the average Venezuelan lost 24 pounds. People were so desperate there were reports of them breaking into zoos to steal animals for food. So what did the government do? It just started printing more money, which led to one of the worst cases of hyperinflation in modern history. In 2018, the inflation rate hit 130,000%. That's a number so big your brain can't even really process it. So let's talk about what that actually felt like in real life. You see, when your money is losing value by the hour, it's a total waste of time to count it. You needed giant stacks of bills to buy anything. So shopkeepers started doing the only logical thing left. They just started weighing the cash on scales. The value wasn't the number printed on the bill anymore. It was just the physical weight of the paper. And this quote just says it all. You'd hear things like, "That loaf of bread? That'll be 2 kilos of cash, please." It's not even a joke. It was just reality. People were carrying backpacks full of worthless money just to buy a soda. So, when you're facing starvation, when your society is completely fallen apart, what do? You run. You just get out. And as this chart shows, over 7 million Venezuelans have fled their country. Now, look at that number. Compare it to the Syrian refugee crisis. At over 7 million, the Venezuelan exodus is actually larger than the displacement caused by Syria's brutal civil war. And remember, the crisis in Venezuela was caused entirely by economic collapse. But these people couldn't just hop on a flight to Miami like their parents did. They had to walk thousands of miles. Many have to cross the Darien Gap, this lawless 100-mile stretch of jungle between Colombia and Panama. It's one of the most dangerous places on Earth. You have to imagine mothers carrying their children through mud up to their waists, seeing the bodies of people who just couldn't make it any further. And here's the crucial thing. They weren't fleeing a war. They weren't fleeing an earthquake. They were fleeing a bad economic idea. So, after all that, where does that leave Venezuela today? Let's talk about what we can learn from the rubble of what was once the richest country in Latin America. What's left today is this strange zombie economy. The government finally just gave up, and now the US dollar is used everywhere. And this has created these bizarre little bubbles of wealth in Caracas, where you can find Ferrari dealerships and fancy restaurants for the tiny elite who are still connected to the government. But just a few miles away from all that, millions live in slums with no clean water or reliable power. It is the most extreme inequality you can possibly imagine. You know, it's easy to look at a story like this and think, well, that could never happen here. But you have to remember the 1970s. Remember demagos. They thought their wealth was permanent too. So if there's one ultimate lesson from Venezuela, it's this. It does not matter how much oil you have in the ground. Natural resources are not enough. If you destroy your institutions, if you fire your experts, if you break the basic trust that holds a society together, and if you let corruption eat away at the foundations, even the richest country on earth can turn into a graveyard. And that is the warning from Venezuela. It's this haunting reminder that prosperity is incredibly fragile. And the boring stuff, the institutions, the rule of law, the trust, that's all far more valuable than any resource you can pull from the ground. Because as the saying goes, history doesn't repeat itself, but it sure does rhyme. And the echoes from Venezuela's collapse are a warning for all of us.